Coalition on Adult Basic Education, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to What You Need to Know to Make the Capitol Hill Day a Success. In this webinar, we will be featuring Polly Smith, who is our Public Policy Chair, as well as Jean Sofer, who's our Public Policy Consultant. We'll also have a few words from Christine Heinrich, who is our coordinator. But I'd also like to give a shout out to ETS HiSET, who is the sponsor of our Public Policy and Capitol Hill Day. So I'm going to move to the next slide here and then turn this over to Sherry Mayo from ETS HiSET to say a few words. Sherry?
Thank you, Sharon. I just want to say we're looking forward, we're proud to sponsor Capitol Hill Day, and we're looking forward to a great event. So thanks for having us.
Great, thank you so much, Sherry. I'd also like to just take a minute to acknowledge a few folks who are in the crowd. We have with us today Tom Nash, who is our board president, as well as Reese Stagnolia, who is the chair-elect for the state directors, and both will be joining us for the Capitol Hill Day in April as well, later this month. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Polly Smith and Jean Sofer. Polly and Jean, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Thanks, Sharon. Thank you, everybody, for attending our webinar. In the webinar, we intend to cover the purpose of why we're going to the Hill, the logistics of actually getting to Washington, D.C. and where we'll be staying. We'll talk about how to prepare for and conduct your meetings. We'll also cover information on the impact of WIOA and provide you with talking points for you to take to your meeting. We'll conclude with our ask. Please feel free to use the chat section at the bottom of your screen if you have questions or you have comments you'd like to make as we move along. Next slide.
So the purpose of Capitol Hill Day is, as Lyndon Johnson famously said, to make friends before you need them, to remind your elected officials that all politics is local, and to educate them about the work that you do and the importance of adult education, and to apply what we might call citizen power, your knowledge, your energy, your expertise in pursuit of the goal of growth in funding for adult education. Excuse me. Next slide, please. So when you are on the Hill, your goal will be to make friends for adult education and simultaneously influence the people who control federal purse strings. To educate your members of Congress and your senators about the importance of adult education, and to educate and elevate and invest in adult education is our message. Finally, the point of the day is to develop lasting relationships and remind the people with whom you meet that you are a resource for them. Christine?
Hi, everyone. Christine Heinrich here. We just wanted to go over a few logistics of the meeting itself. We are going to be staying at the Courtyard by Marriott Pentagon South in Alexandria, Virginia. And I am taking care of everyone's room there, so you don't need to call and make your own reservations. I would plan on flying into the Reagan-Washington National Airport because that is the closest airport. It's about a 12-minute ride from the Reagan Airport, and there is a shuttle from the Courtyard to the airport that runs about every 20 minutes, they stated. And then the hotel is about 16 minutes from the Capitol, but that doesn't include traffic. So Wednesday morning on the 26th, you should probably plan on half an hour to 45 minutes to get from the courtyard to the Capitol. And we will be taking taxis that morning. We have a prep meeting and dinner scheduled for Tuesday night, the 25th at Virtue Feed and Grain. And we will be providing transportation from the courtyard to the venue for that. Then on Wednesday morning, breakfast is served at the courtyard in their bistro, and that starts at 6 a.m. and goes till 10. So I would give yourself some time to eat some breakfast before you head off to your meetings for the day. We will, like I said, be using taxis for that Wednesday morning, and most likely be using Uber to schedule the taxis, as they do come pretty quick as soon as you schedule them. Now, once we're done with our meetings on the Capitol that Wednesday the 26th, we would plan on everyone being back to the hotel by 3 o'clock for a debrief meeting, and that will be in the courtyard's Capitol 3 and 4 meeting rooms. And just a note, someone had emailed me a question that brought up a good point, that you're probably going to have to check out of your room that Wednesday morning before you head off to your meetings. So please feel free to bring your luggage into that Capitol 3 and 4 meeting room. I will be working in that room all day, so I can be in the room with your luggage so you have a place to store it. And next slide.
So when you get to the Capitol, you'll need to pass through security, which means putting your coins, your phone, your briefcase, your overcoat through an X-ray machine. You don't need special identification to enter congressional office buildings. If you are meeting with someone at the Capitol building itself, the process is a bit more complex and will take more time. And just to be on the safe side, don't bring liquids with you. That'll all expedite your entry into the Capitol complex. As you can see from the map on the next page, the 3 Senate office buildings are on Constitution Avenue. The 3 House office buildings are on Independence Avenue. The Capitol is in the middle. To the extent that you can, you should try to stack your meetings so that you are doing your Senate meetings consecutively, then going to the House, or doing your House meetings consecutively, then going to the Senate, instead of running back and forth. It's a good 10, 12-minute walk across the Capitol grounds. And each time you go in and out of the building, you have to go through security again. So preparing for a meeting on Capitol Hill, the next slide, please. Be on time. Essentially, you want to treat the people with whom you're meeting the way you would want to be treated by them. So be on time, even be a little bit early. The crowds at the Capitol complex are completely unpredictable. Sometimes there'll be long lines to get into the buildings, and other times there'll be no lines at all. So allow yourself enough time. Be informed. Use the talking points that we've prepared with you, for you, and augment them with the information that you prepare about your own programs. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And it always helps to know who you are talking to. So do some research about your members of Congress and your senators. You can visit the COABE app, or every member of Congress has his or her own website to learn about background, interests, and priorities. This will help you to find some common ground with the person that you are meeting with. Be concise. The typical meeting takes about 20 to 30 minutes, so you should be prepared to make your points effectively. Give them the opportunity to ask questions. Also, be flexible. Some congressional offices are cramped and you might be asked to meet in the hall or in the cafeteria. Don't worry about that. It's not personal. I was in a meeting this morning in a hallway that was filled with old furniture. But it's just one of those things. Next slide, please. So as you know, our goal is to influence people who are responsible for determining the funding levels for adult education. So those are the members of the House and Senate Labor, Health, Human Services Appropriations subcommittees. Our secondary targets are members of the Appropriations Committee who don't sit on that particular subcommittee. We'll also target members of the committees that are responsible for the oversight of WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, members of the Senate Health Committee, and members of the House Education and Workforce Committee. Next slide, please. So as you can imagine, not every state or congressional district is represented on every committee or subcommittee. So if you fall into the category of not having a member of Congress on one of those committees or subcommittees, let us know, and we'll try to figure out other people for whom, with whom you should be meeting, and we'll try to help you tailor your talking points to their interests. So that if your elected representative is, for example, on the Small Business Committee, we'll try to think of how adult education positively affects small business. Or if they're on the Veterans Affairs Committee, what adult education is doing and can do for returning veterans and military families. Next slide, please. So you want to do some research so that you can address your legislators' priorities. One state legislator told the visit that he wasn't interested at all in equity issues, he only cared about jobs. So you wouldn't want to talk to that person about fairness, access, and inequality. On the other hand, if your legislator represented a district that had high degrees of poverty, high degrees of unemployment, they might be interested in issues of fairness, access, and inequality. So the more you know about the person you're meeting with, the more you know about the district that he or she represents, the more you can organize your talking points accordingly. So the page that you are now looking at, titled "Create Your Own Materials," is a copy of a one-pager that was done by the Pennsylvania Adult Education Association, and which they kindly have shared with us. And as you can see, what it does is it includes both information about the nation as a whole and information specifically about Pennsylvania. And it's a good template for you to use to adapt to your own needs. The next slide, please. Okay, so now you've passed through security and you're in the Capitol building or one of the 6 office buildings. Bring a business card that introduces you and has your contact information so the staff can follow up with you after you leave Washington and get back home. Explain that you're part of a delegation from COABE, and that COABE has 20,000 members across the country and is an increasingly important voice for adult education at the federal level. The next slide, please. The person that you're going to be meeting with is likely to be responsible for several issues, and he or she may not know anything about adult education. So literally be prepared to start at the beginning with what adult education does, who the students are, what you do. Use the reference materials in your package, and be prepared to answer whatever questions they might have. In addition to knowing more than the person you're meeting with, the chances are pretty good that you'll be older than the person with whom you're meeting. And while it may be sometimes a challenge, always be respectful. There's a question which seems to be, what package or binder are we talking about? Everybody will get a package of materials at dinner the night before of talking points and information about logistics and some other stuff. You're welcome. So at the end of the meeting, get the business card of the person with whom you've met so that you can email materials and stay in touch. You know, if you're thinking about bringing a report, for example, and you've got 8 meetings and it's going to weigh you down and weigh down your luggage, in this day and age, you can certainly say, you know, we've done this report, I'll email it to you, send it to you electronically, as opposed to giving them a hard copy. Offer to host the elected official or the staff back in the district so that they can see adult education in action and meet the students, employers, and others who benefit from the programs. And when you get home, follow up with a thank you email and remind the staff person with whom you met that you're the resource upon which they can rely. So we've talked a lot about talking points, and we will provide you with this, and again, we encourage you to develop your own. But among the points that you want to make in your meeting, and next slide, please, I'm sorry. Is that adult education serves 1.5 million adults who are no longer in school and lack the basic skills for a job that provides a meaningful wage and an opportunity for advancement. That adult education is one way to help people on the path from low-income jobs and dead-end futures to family-sustaining jobs and post-secondary education. That in the globally competitive world in which we live, we cannot afford to waste the talents of even one person. And that in this day and age, people need to be able to read, perform basic math, use a computer, and solve problems creatively. Excuse me. By this time, people on the Hill, next slide, please. By this time, most of the people that you'll meet with will know that adult education is Title II of WIOA. They may or may not know that WIOA passed the Congress in 2014 with enormous bipartisan support, and that WIOA established adult education as one of the key partners in a system of education and training that is focused on job readiness and providing access to post-secondary education. And that one of the underlying assumptions of WIOA is that adult education and the other workforce partners are more integrated, working closely together, better aligned, have common performance measures, and that the Congress understood when it passed the bill that this new alignment had costs associated with it. Polly?
There are additional talking points for you to use in your meeting, that the problem is large and growing. More than 36 million Americans can't read or write at the most basic level. That's 1 in 8 Americans can't read and write at the most basic level. More than 60 million Americans lack math skills. That's 1 in 4. Additionally, 60 million Americans lack the credentials and skills they need to succeed in post-secondary education. Next slide, please. More talking points. Every year, 1 in 3 young adults drop out of high school. There are wait lists across the country for adult education services. More than 3 million want adult education services, but they can't get access to them. Adjusting for inflation, funding for adult education has decreased by 25.3% since 2001. And the numbers of students served has also declined by 44%. Next slide, please. So with the problem comes the impact on our economy of underinvestment in education. Low literacy levels link directly to social issues such as inequality, higher rates of unemployment, lower income, higher hospitalization rates. Adults without a high school credential are more than twice as likely than those with a high school credential to be living in poverty. They're 3 times more likely to be unemployed than those with a college degree. This is one that experts estimate the cost of low literacy to the United States at $225 billion in lost tax revenue, reduced productivity, crime, and poor health. Next slide, please.
So this slide about low-skilled workers and the next slide about adult education and rural America are intended to help you address the needs of the congressional districts that whose members you'll be meeting. Some will have workers who are in the service sector. Others will have districts that are largely agricultural. What both share is that there's a scarcity of jobs and a job mismatch that people, even people with some education, may lack the skills to actually do the jobs. And so again, when you are doing your meetings, you should be aware to the extent possible of the kind of district that your member of Congress represents. In virtually all cases, there's next slide, please, a high correlation between low education and poverty, and education is associated with higher earnings. In 2013, as the slide suggests, the chances that you, if you had a high school diploma and you were in a non-metropolitan area, there was a good chance that your income would be more than $6,000 higher than if you lacked the high school diploma or the equivalent. The next slide is just a map that shows you those counties in the country where 20% or more of the adults aged 25 to 64 don't have a high school diploma or the equivalent. And you can just see that this is not only an urban problem, it's also a non-urban, non-metro problem as well. Polly?
Hallie, we can't hear you.
This is the information we have from the PIAC, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, a consortia of over 35 different countries who did a international assessment of adult competencies, and they conducted a survey of adult skills. Around 25 countries originally participated, and now there are up to 33 who are participating in looking at the issue of adult education and our global economy. So you can see in the graph here that the United States is 14th in literacy and 25th in mathematics. That's out of 33 countries participating. The next slide. So not only are we not at the top, we are rapidly losing ground when we compare ourselves to other countries who are working on and succeeding in increasing the educational levels of their young people and their working age adults. Next slide, please.
So what does it all mean? And this quote from Mark Tucker sums it up. Still the case, and likely to continue to be the case, that unless something changes, American workers, once the best educated in the world, are now among the least well educated in the industrialized world. Let me digress for a second and tell you briefly about a meeting that we had this morning with a Republican House member who is now shocked and dismayed by the results of the PIAC study that the country, the U.S. is faring so poorly both in math and literacy, and so people on the Hill now understand that there is a significant problem. Next slide, please. So the next element in all of this is having come to the conclusion that there is in fact a problem, we have to convince them that adult education is part of the solution. And the paper cited here from 2011, put out by the McGraw-Hill Research Foundation, found that a preemptive focus on adult ed actually saves government's money by reducing societal healthcare, public assistance, and incarceration. And you can read the other yourselves. The next slide shows a graph. This is included in a recent report on the value of adult education put out by Pro Literacy that shows that, I'll just read the conclusion. During the 10-year period, ABS participants showed mean income gains of 53% as compared to an income drop of 2% for non-participants. This large overall difference suggests that ABS program participation may be central to sustained income growth for this low education population. Again, this is all intended to show that investing in adult education is part of the solution to the problem. Next slide, please. That adult education is a gateway to a job and a career. Adequately funded, it would yield substantial fiscal and societal benefits, adding to economic growth, personal incomes, increased tax revenues, and savings on incarceration and health care. Next slide, please. You can read the numbers for yourself. Particularly relevant in some districts is the first data point that inmates who are incarcerated, who are educated while they are incarcerated, are 43% less likely to return to prison. Also, particularly in the context of the Affordable Care Act, that improving adult literacy can save the economy hundreds of billions of dollars in health expenditures. Next slide, please. And as we all know, educating parents has an impact not only on their own education and employability, but on the educational attainment levels of their children. And mothers and fathers who learn basic skills are better equipped to help their children succeed. And data show that 100 or more hours of participation in adult education classes is equal to about almost $10,000 a year in extra earnings. The next slide, please. So by the time that we get to Washington, Congress may have completed its work on the FY 2017 budget. Remember that we are in the 2017 ends September 30th. The administration has proposed a series of deep cuts in fiscal 17 to increase defense, to pay for construction of the wall and the southwestern border, to provide for funds for a big education voucher initiative. And it appears, based on the meetings that we've had, that that the Congress is prepared to reject these administration requests and finish its work. In the meantime, the Congress has begun to consider appropriations for fiscal year 18. And as you may recall, fiscal year 18, the administration has put out a so-called skinny budget with few programmatic details. The full budget is now probably due sometime in May and may slip until June. In the aggregate, it proposes to cut domestic discretionary spending by roughly $54 billion and to spend that amount on defense. But there's much that the budget does not tell us. In particular, it says that it proposes to cut the Department of Education by about $9 billion, or roughly 14% below the current level. But the document only identifies about $5 billion in cuts. So there's $4 billion that we don't know about. The skinny budget is silent on adult education, but members of Congress are proceeding on the basis that all programs not targeted for increases would have to be reduced by 14% if the budget math in the administration budget is going to work out. So we are going up to the Hill opposed to what we believe will be a proposed 14% reduction in adult education spending. The next slide, please. In addition to the cut in education, the president's budget proposes to cut the Department of Labor by 21%, or $2.5 billion. The target here is funding for ineffective, duplicative, and peripheral job training grants. That is the Title I of WIOA. It is important to remember, however, that, as President Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, it is the duty of the president to propose, and it is the privilege of the Congress to dispose. So while the president has sent up this budget, many members of Congress on both sides of the aisle have criticized the depth of these cuts and indicated that they would not be supportive of them. So in the final analysis, the decisions about funding will ultimately be made by the Congress through the appropriations process. And that is why we are talking to the people that we are talking to when we go to Hill Day. So the next slide, please. So boiled down to 2 talking points. Our ask is that adult education funding must be increased if we are to make WIOA a success. And second, that Congress should fund adult education at least at $649 million. Polly, I apologize. I think I did yours.
Yes, but you did it so well, Gene.
I got carried away.
And I think it's important to note here that this $649 million is what the authors of the WIOA bill thought it would take to make WIOA succeed in the way they intended it to. So I think that's important for us to share with everyone. And yes, the $649 million is an increase from the WIA money.
Yes.
So I would just like to remind you that we are recording this webinar and it will be available to you so you can have access to these many talking points that we kind of highlighted here. And also the PIAC information is online and available to you, as well as, I think Jean mentioned, or one of the slides called the State Director's Blue Book.
Yes.
Gives information about adult education at the state level, which I find very useful when I'm building my talking points for my legislators. And next slide, please.
Shall I do this one? Okay. So remember these key points. Adults with low education and skill levels are a fundamental barrier to almost every major challenge we face as a country. The need for early childhood education, the need for education reform, our ability to compete internationally, improving the health and well-being of our nation's families, reducing crime, and restoring the American dream. Also, that adult education works. That over the last 15 years, the number of adults without a high school diploma or the equivalent declined by 1/5. And not only does adult education make people more educated, it makes them better wage earners by almost $10,000 a year compared to non-graduates. And finally, that if WIOA is to succeed, adult education funding must be increased. The system cannot achieve its goals unless it is adequately funded. Next slide, please.
Oh, okay, thank you, Jean and Polly and Christine for your help so far. We just wanted to leave everybody with 4 things we need you to do today. The first is that if you've not made your flight reservations, we really encourage you to do that as quickly as possible. So that's the first. Also, if you've not set up appointments yet with your legislators, you'll want to get right on that. And I included the link here that you can use. We'll also be sending this information out to you tomorrow. It will be coming around 3 o'clock via a Zoom platform. We also wanted to encourage you that if you have not participated yet in our National Public Awareness Campaign, it's a great time to do that. It takes about 5 minutes. It automatically links you to your legislators for emails and phone calls. It's really user-friendly. And then finally, we want to encourage you to download the COABE app. And the COABE app is available on our website. I'll also include the link here before we send this out to you tomorrow. So in closing, those are the 4 things. If you've not made your flight reservations, if you've not set up your appointments yet with legislators, you'll really want to get going with that. And then, of course, downloading the app and participating in the public awareness campaign. And Polly and Jean, before we go any further, I see that there's some questions and some chats. Do you want to address those?
Sure. From Jesse, I have a question associated with my attendance.
And I can actually answer that. I just saw an email from Jesse as well. So if Jean, would you like me to respond?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So Jesse, you're all set. We're delighted that you're coming. I believe you're coming from Iowa. And we're appreciative you're making plans at this date to come. So Christine Heinrich, who's our coordinator, will be in touch very shortly with next steps. But you're definitely welcome to come, and we're excited that you're coming.
Okay. Joanne, where do we go to create our materials? Well, you can, excuse me. You can start with slide number 14, create your own materials, and use that as a template. And you can augment that with some of the data from the Blue Book, which Polly mentioned, that the state directors compile about the profile of adult education in your state. And then finally, you can add materials about your own program, who you teach, what they learn, what we know about what they do after they graduate and such. So does that help?
And I should also say that on the COABE website in the Legislative Center are fact sheets that have many of these talking points as well for the national level. And I also use the American Survey from the census data to get specific information about high school completion rates, poverty rates for particular districts.
Gilda asked, if we're not able to get an appointment with our legislators, should we still plan on to attend Capitol Hill Day? I think that you should, and this is similar to Marissa's question as well, guidance about how to set up appointments with the legislators. Sharon just referred you to the last slide, the second bullet, set up your appointments by using CapWiz. You can do that, or you can call their Washington offices and explain who you are, explain what you're going to be doing, and ask for an appointment. you may have to nag them a bit, but you should not have any reluctance to do that. I mean, their job is to meet with you, and so you should, keep plugging away. I would say yes. So if the next question is, I've reached out as recommended on their websites. So yes, I would say if the website has not worked as well as you might have liked, I would pick up the phone and call them. And you can also call their district offices if you have contacts in the district office. And every member of Congress and every senator has several. You can call them and say to the people that you know in the district that you'll be in Washington on April 26th and you'd like to set up a meeting and you're having some difficulty, and can they help you?
And I also asked to speak with the staff who are responsible for education, workforce development, economic development, so that there are a variety of audiences we can reach out to when we're making our appointments.
So I would say that perhaps by a week from today, if you still haven't had any success, let us know, and maybe we can help to try to make some of those appointments for you. But it's also, I should say, now it's a congressional recess, and offices are not necessarily fully staffed, and they're taking things somewhat more casually than they do when the Congress is in session. So keep trying. Appointments with legislators should be between 9 and 2 p.m. Ideally, I think you could even go till 2:30 and still be fairly confident that you could get back to the hotel for the debrief by 3. I would say that if, for example, you were told that you could meet with the senator or the member of Congress himself or herself, at 3 o'clock, that might be a meeting that I would want to do. So you have to exercise some judgment. And of course, it also depends on your flight schedule. Is that helpful?
Jean, I also just want to read something that Victoria from California wrote here in our chat box, because I think it's really helpful. She wrote, "I just want to share that meeting with legislator staff is often productive and important. These folks are tasked with research and feed information to legislators upon which their decisions to support are made. I have had very good results in the past working directly with staff." And that's a great point, Victoria, because if we can't get an appointment with a legislator, their staff are often just as, it's just as helpful to have that meeting with the staff person as the legislator. There's also a question here, Jean, about the binder that folks will get, or a folder that they're going to get in advance. So that's from Sarah Gutting, who's actually on our board. So that everybody is aware, we do provide a folder of information that you'll receive in advance there the night before. So on April 25th, we'll have a meeting. You all will go over. Jean, we can hear you coughing. Sorry.
Sorry, I meant to mute.
It's okay. So we'll go over all the materials in the binder. the night before. Also, Christine Heinrich, who's our coordinator, is going to be sending out information in advance, I believe, actually, along with the link to the archived copy of this webinar and some other materials such as this PowerPoint. So you'll have the PowerPoint, you'll have this webinar, access to the webinar, and then also information that will be included in the packet that you're going to get on the 25th. So hopefully you'll be well prepared. You can review that information in advance. But then again, we'll also go over all of that when we're face-to-face on the 25th so that you feel comfortable going into your meeting on the 26th. And then I see that there's another question here, or a comment rather, someone indicating that they're having difficulty making appointments with legislators. I just want to encourage you to look at the link that I sent you just now. The CAPWIS link is in the chat box. Try using that. That's been really helpful. So far, when people use that link, they're able to get appointments. But here again, if not, Christine and I are also available to help if needed, because the whole point of this Capitol Hill Day is that you make appointments with your legislators. So we can certainly help you if needed. Polly and Jean, did you want to say anything at this point?
I just want to say thank you to everyone who's attending, and I appreciate your passion for advocacy, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
And I would just say, if after we leave the webinar, you realize that you had a question that you neglected to ask, send it on and we'll do our best to answer it.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for making the time. I'd also like to again thank ETS HiSat and Cherry Mayo for making not only this webinar possible, but our Capitol Hill Day, which is generously supported by ETS HiSat. And one other comment is that for the first time this year, we'll be bringing some students in with us through state association partnership and also scholarships that we offered this year. So just wanted to note that. And before we sign off, is there anything else for the good of the order that Polly or Jean that you would like to mention?
There, Sharon, there's one other question which perhaps you can answer.
Okay. The link states it's used to let you know what appointments are already being set up, now how to set them up. So sorry, I'm just looking at the link right now. Okay, so my apologies. What you'll want to do is go to your legislator's website, get their phone number, their email address for their staffers or for that specific legislator, and try to make an appointment. Once you've gotten that together, then you're going to want to go into the link and note what appointments have been made. And that way we'll have one giant calendar, one list of all the scheduled appointments to date.
Sharon, did we send out phone numbers?
I don't know.
I think we have them on some document that we could make available.
So in the past, so this is our third Capitol Hill Day, National Capitol Hill Day that we've done. In the past, Jean, as our public policy consultant, has gotten together phone numbers to make it easy for those who are trying to make appointments. So Jean, if you'd like to take a look at the list of all the attendees, the folks that will be attending, and we can certainly send that document out so that it'll make it easier for people.
Okay, what I think that the list that we have is a list of all of the appropriators on the subcommittee. So maybe we can send that out too. Shall I send that to Christine? And
Yep, that would be great.
okay, okay, excellent.
So before we close, I would like to note that Nancy Allen said that she was able to contact her local state senator who helped get contact in the DC office so she could get an appointment set up. So if you have that kind of a relationship, that might be helpful. Thank you, Nancy.
Great, thank you. And I see one final comment from our board president, Tom Nash, who writes, "Thank you all for your efforts with this event. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody on the Hill." So with that, I'd like to say thank you as well. Thank you to Polly and to Jean and Christine, as well as Sherry Mayo from ETS HiSet. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you in DC.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you
Bye.
soon.